Hi everyone. I've got a special guest on my live today. Be sure to say hello in the comments. In today's live, I'm going to be talking about the best type of exercise for fat loss. So this is a question that people always want to know. As a personal trainer, people have this question, what type of exercise should I do? What should it look like? How can I lose fat? So we're going to dive into that a little bit because many people are very interested in how to achieve fat loss efficiently and effectively. So we're going to start off by saying that there is no magic pill for this. I want to be as genuine and honest with you, as authentic as I can be, there is no magic pill. There is no secret to achieving this. There are just principles to follow. There is no one type of exercise that's going to be the end-all, be-all for every single person. Now, that being said, the best type of exercise for fat loss is the one that you will do. The one that you will do consistently over time, and it's sustainable for your lifestyle. There are some differences. Let's talk about cardio versus resistance training, because people often ask about how often should they do resistance training? How often should they do cardio? How should they split it? Which one is better? So cardio and resistance training are both great for your health. So both of these are important components to being healthy, is that you exercise in a way that improves your cardiovascular health and exercise in a way that offers resistance training for your body and allows you to develop the strength and adaptations to that resistance training. Now, cardio is not as effective overall for fat loss as resistance training. So bang for your buck, if you were going to choose one of the two, resistance training is actually a better way to achieve fat loss than cardiovascular training. The reason being that resistance training is going to increase your metabolism, build muscle, and that's going to allow you to just burn more calories, burn more fat when you're at rest, and it's going to make your body more efficient at that. Cardio is a really important thing to include for your heart health. Obviously, it does burn calories, but it has a side effect that sometimes it can make you feel hungrier, and it's sometimes could also lead to a decrease in muscle if that's the only thing that you're doing and you're not supplementing yourself in the right way nutritionally. Then I want to mention a few things as far as when it comes to that resistance training that you enjoy and want to do regularly. There's a difference between lifting or doing resistance training randomly versus doing it with a progressive program. Because when you're doing it randomly, first of all, you're often not giving yourself the progressive stimulus over time that you need to see improvements, but you aren't able to measure that progress well, versus when you have a progressive program. And measuring that progress is important because it helps you to keep going, to be consistent, to be motivated as you see that progress over time. So having a progressive program is going to be a much more effective way to get towards your goals of building muscle or burning fat. Both of those kind of go hand in hand. So having a progressive program is important because that's really what's going to help you achieve that sustainability and that consistency over time. When we train randomly, that has some benefit in that you're giving your body all these different stimuluses, and really any movement is better than no movement. It's good for your body to get the blood flow and get stimulus. And if you really want to make measured progress, having something that's progressive over time is going to get you further than just jumping from one thing to the other. In addition to the fact that, if you're jumping from one thing to the other, it's harder to see progress. Like I said, it's easier to get discouraged and demotivated because you don't really know if anything is happening. Hi, thanks for being here. Thanks for joining. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. We're talking about the best type of exercise for fat loss, which, hint, is the type that you'll actually do. What is the best training system for naturals? By naturals, do you mean somebody who's not doing steroids? I'm not sure if that's what you mean. Let me know what you mean. Okay, so the other thing on the best type of exercise for fat loss is that age gender, stress level, and your lifestyle are all going to play a role in what the best type of exercise is for you and how you achieve that fat loss. Because your age is going to affect it. You know, when you're younger, you may be able to achieve fat loss in a way that isn't realistic when you're older, both based on just where your body is at, but also what's going on in your life. Your gender is going to affect it because men and women's bodies are very different hormonally, and it's just going to look different for men versus women, and how much exercise stress you're able to handle is going to vary according to gender and according to your stress level. So if you have a lot of stress in your life, that may make it harder to lose fat at that period of time, because fat loss is going to be achieved when you have a relatively lower amount of stress. If your stress becomes too high, you aren't able to recover and you're going to cause inflammation in the body. So your stress level is something to consider, and your lifestyle. So what you have going on, things that may affect that stress level. You know, if you work a night shift, that's going to increase your stress levels. You know, if you, it may affect how much time that you have to work out. Hi, Tad. Thanks for your question. He asked, what's your take on the 30-minute metabolic kettlebell workout where they just tend to burn fat? I'm not really sure exactly what you mean by that. Maybe you can explain to me what you mean by the 30-minute metabolic workout where they just tend to burn fat. Kettlebell workouts in general are very effective as total body workouts because it's really difficult not to work your whole body, even just holding onto a kettlebell. It really does work your whole body. So kettlebells are a great way to, offer resistance training and burn fat. Now, I want to keep going on some of the things I have on my outline here because these may answer some of your questions. First of all, I want to talk about for women. If you're a woman and you're watching this, we have more body fat than men, and it's healthy for us to have more body fat than men. So you may not lose like stubborn fat or reduce fat in problem areas without extreme restriction. I think it's important to decide whether you want to worry about having fat in certain spots or whether you want to be healthy overall. Because sometimes, like I said, reducing in a certain area, that may just be an area that you hold fat. And so to try to reduce that by extremely restricting yourself may negatively impact your health and your hormones. So something there to keep in mind is it more important for me to have a specific aesthetic with, little fat in these areas, or is it more important for me to be healthy overall? Because sometimes those things aren't going to align. And your body, I would encourage that if you take good care of your body with regards to exercise, with regards to nutrition, I mean, this goes for men as well, but I think in particular it's relevant for women that if you take good care of yourself, nourishing the inside, I think the outside will reflect in a healthy way. And having less attachment or expectation of exactly what that should look like or needs to look like is ultimately going to really free you up to just focus on your health and to, appreciate where your body, goes from there and the improvements that happen aesthetically without, needing it to look a certain way. And particularly for women also, having belly fat is normal. Having some level of belly fat is healthy for most women. On the other side, having a ton of abdominal fat obviously can indicate certain issues, but having some, like a layer of belly fat is normal and healthy for many women. So that may be one of those areas that if you want to get rid of the fat, you have to be really restrictive, and it may negatively impact your health. So the cost of getting lean is not always worth it. Another factor, really, really important, nutrition is going to be key for fat loss. So while we can talk about what exercise you should do all day long, if you haven't dialed in your nutrition, it's going to be really difficult for you to lose fat. It doesn't matter if you're doing some magical workout that's supposed to, melt all the fat away. It's not going to do much if you're not, if you don't have a healthy, balanced diet with plenty of protein. So I think eating enough food, eating enough of the right macronutrients, particularly protein, because people tend to undereat their protein, is really important to lose fat and build muscle. And if you have no idea where you are at with your nutrition, that might be the place to start. For most people, if you have never tracked your food, you have no clue how many grams of protein you're eating, it may really help you to just spend a few weeks tracking what you're eating and not changing anything, but just taking a look at where you're starting from, because that may give you some answers as to how to get to a healthier place where you can tweak and make some adjustments. If you just start tracking and you immediately change your diet as you start tracking, unfortunately, you don't really know what you're changing and you don't know where you're starting at. So if you do decide to track, to take a look at how you can make some improvements, important to take a few weeks, I would say 2 to 4 weeks, to just track what you normally do. And then you can make changes that are actually going to have more of an effect because you know where you're starting from. I know that can be difficult because sometimes we tend to judge ourselves when we track food and we go, oh God, that's so bad, I got to change it. Try to avoid judging and just use it as information in order to be more effective in getting to where you want to go. PC said, hi, when I burn fat, I also lose muscle. What can I do to prevent it? First of all, I'd ask you, how do you know that you're losing muscle when you're burning fat? Just out of curiosity, how do you know that you're losing muscle? Are you just seeing a visual difference? You're probably, so here's the thing. It can also be a bit challenging to do both building a lot of muscle and burning fat at the same time. You absolutely can build muscle and burn fat. It depends at the level at which you're looking for that. So if you think about people who build muscle and burn fat for a living, a bodybuilder, for example, which is an extreme case, not necessarily healthy, but they generally go through like a bulking period where they gain a lot of muscle but also fat, and then they go through a period where they cut the fat down because it is difficult to build a lot of muscle without gaining some fat in the process, because you need to eat a lot of calories in order to build a large amount of muscle and to recover from the training that you're doing. So one, you could be perhaps under-eating is one thing. You may be under-eating or under-eating protein. You may be working out too much. You could be working out in a way that's causing you to kind of cannibalize your efforts. So those could be a couple things to consider. Again, it's a little bit difficult for me to give you an exact answer without more information because each person is different and depends on, again, what you're doing now with your diet, with your exercise, these different factors that I mentioned, you know, your age, your gender, your stress, your lifestyle, etc. If you guys have any other questions, drop them in the comments. Let me know. So what we've covered is there is no magic pill for the exact best type of exercise for fat loss. I know the title of this live says the best type, but I am telling you the best type, which is the one that you will do consistently. And I've talked about this in a previous live, but the most important thing about consistency is that your routine is sustainable. If you can't sustain it for the next 5 years, then it's probably not going to get you the results you want. If the way that you're training right now is like, well, I could do it for a month tops, and then I need to take a break because I'm really using up all my willpower doing this, then it's not a sustainable way to train. So really, you don't have to exercise a crazy amount. You don't have to suffer a lot when you're working out in order to see progress and results. Again, this varies also depending on what stage of your training journey you're on, but in general, as a beginner, you don't need to do a ton of exercise because you don't need a ton of stimulus in order to make change. If you're coming from doing nothing to doing a little bit, you're not going to need to do a ton to start to see progress. And then as you get more advanced, you may need more stimulus than a beginner does, but it's also, once you've built a certain amount of muscle, it's fairly easy to retain it, to maintain that muscle. So it actually also isn't as difficult to maintain your progress or make progress when you're further down the road. Tad has a question, how much protein is enough? For instance, for someone who weighs 200 pounds, how many grams? It's really different to get enough protein for CrossFit or a bodybuilder or a powerlifter. Yeah, so how much protein you should ultimately be eating? People, there's different sources out there that tell you different things. I generally try to follow 1 gram per pound body weight. You might use that as 1 gram per pound desired body weight. depending on where you're at. If you're 200 pounds, you'd like to be, 180 and lose some body fat. Maybe you're aiming for 180 grams a day. That's a general guideline, like for, I believe it's from, I'm probably going to get this wrong, NSCA or ACE or something like that. They have a recommendation for that, like for athletes or something. So you don't necessarily have to follow that exactly. And here's where I think tracking your nutrition and seeing what you're doing now is really important. If you track what you're doing now, you can make a more accurate adjustment for you. Because say you're only eating, say you don't know it, but you're only eating 50 grams of protein a day. If you then try to jump from 50 grams to 180 grams a day, it's probably not really realistic. I think your digestive system might have a hard time with that. I think like you will just feel so stuffed. It might be pretty tough to make that jump. So I would say it matters less maybe exactly where you end up. Of course, you could always go really excessive, which is a little bit too much, but in general, a good range is somewhere around 1 gram per pound of desired body weight, and look at where you're starting, and then you can make adjustments. So I think if you take a look at where you're at, and like I said, you're only eating 50 grams a day, maybe your goal for the next few weeks is to bump it up to 60 or 70 grams a day and see how you feel as you do that. And then, maybe you bump it up a little bit more. And again, for each person, there's gonna be a difference too. I'm not a nutritionist, so I'm not giving specific nutrition advice, but I just sharing that from personal experience and from things I've seen with other people. Everybody's body is different. So where you feel good with how much protein you're eating may vary as well. So for some people, maybe 1 gram per pound body weight is just way too much and they don't feel good doing that, then they may scale it back a little bit. And for some people, it may not be enough. They may want to eat more than that and they feel really good eating more than that. So there's going to be some experimentation that you can do with your body and seeing what feels right for you and seeing how, what results you get from doing that. At least giving yourself maybe a few weeks. Say, you did make that adjustment 50 to 65 or 70. Maybe you give yourself a few weeks, 2, 3, 4 weeks. See how you feel at that before you make adjustments. I think a mistake that people often make is trying to make too big of a change and then too quickly, like not giving it enough time to set in before they try something else or they stop doing it. So to say, well, I'm going to see how I feel with 70 grams of protein for 2 days. And then if it doesn't immediately show me something, well then screw that. I'm not going to do it anymore. Or I need to, I need to go up. I need to increase right away, which doesn't really give you a chance to see the effects of what you're doing. So I think slowing down and taking your time to make little steps and giving yourself a good period of time to adjust to that little step is a really smart way to go. If you can have the patience, I know it's tough, if you can have the patience to do that, I think you're overall going to see better results and have a better understanding of your body and where the results are coming from. Because that's important as well. If you're changing a lot of different things in your lifestyle and you don't know which one had the biggest effect, you're not really sure what to focus on. So changing one thing at a time, and that will also give you a better idea of like where to really focus your effort to get the most bang for your buck. Any other questions on that? Let me know in the comments if you have any other questions. So I mentioned having a progressive training program. This is something that's really helpful because it helps you see your progress over time, helps you to stay motivated so that you can be consistent, and ideally that program is really sustainable. So while it's important for a program to be progressive, again, I think sometimes people try to push that progress too much. So for example, if every workout you do, you're trying to up the ante and make it more difficult, lift more weight, do more reps, push, 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 at a certain point, you're going to hit a ceiling. You can't keep doing that forever because that's not, unfortunately, how our body adapts because we're not superheroes. It'd be nice if it did, but you kind of have to undulate a little bit so that, over time, ideally you're improving, but you're giving yourself that undulation to allow yourself to recover, take rest periods, account for getting sick, account for stressful periods of time. And it's important to have a training program that gives you enough dose to make progress, but not so much dosage that you go too far. Because what happens there is you risk burnout, you risk injury, you risk, disrespecting your body's boundaries, and having a less harmonious relationship with your body. Just kind of using up all your willpower and not enjoying your workouts anymore, or you're struggling to get yourself started with a workout because you know it's going to be really difficult and you're constantly trying to push yourself harder and harder and harder. So having a progressive program that's realistic, that's sustainable, that's doable. And if you don't know what that looks like, I offer those kind of programs inside the Kettlebell Solo membership. We have over 15 programs and 120 plus classes where we show you how to train in a manner that's progressive with a minimal effective dose, but sustainable. Let's see. Okay, we got a comment here for PC. Yes, increased my cardio and was on interval fasting. Does that mean intermittent fasting? Yeah, so I actually love talking about intermittent fasting from my personal experience. Again, not a dietitian, don't have a specific recommendation that way, but just sharing my experience with fasting. So I can speak from it from a female perspective, is that I used to do intermittent fasting. I used to enjoy it a lot because I was working in gyms, working out multiple times per day. So I would eat breakfast and then I would kind of go all day long without food until dinner. So it was like I had an eating window in the morning and the evening, and I just wouldn't really eat most of the afternoon. And I also had a time period where I did like the fasting overnight and didn't eat until noon, that kind of thing. So it felt good because I was like, using my willpower and getting myself, I haven't eaten for 16 hours, 18 hours. Like, look at me, I can do this. Unfortunately, especially if you exercise a lot, it is really, really difficult to get the amount of nutrition and the nutrients that you need in only 2 meals. Really difficult. Really, really difficult. I just could not eat enough personally in 2 sittings to give myself what I needed with being active. So I was chronically in a deficit. In addition to that, I was pushing myself really hard with my training back then and not eating enough protein. I really dug myself into a hole where I started getting hormonal problems, burnout. Like, it was just seeing decreases in my strength and my health overall. So that's tricky with fasting and with intermittent fasting. It's really tricky to get enough food. I personally don't recommend, especially for women. It's stressful on your hormones to be hungry and to delay your eating window. So for women, that's a really easy way to push yourself too far, including, especially if you're also doing a lot of physical training. So be cautious with intermittent fasting. It's maybe not quite as challenging as a guy because it doesn't have maybe as drastic of a hormonal effect, but I still think it's really difficult to eat enough, especially if you're trying to gain muscle, especially if you're an ectomorph. You're going to have a really, really hard time eating enough protein, eating enough calories. So to ask, why are you doing intermittent fasting? If you're doing intermittent fasting because you want it to help you with fat loss, well, like you said, it may cannibalize the efforts to gain muscle. So then in the long run, you're not really setting yourself up well that way. And you can also lose fat eating three plus meals a day. So you don't have to do intermittent fasting for fat loss. They do say there could be some health benefits, but again, that might depend on the person, and maybe if you're getting negative health effects, maybe that outweighs those potential benefits that you're getting. So maybe just, why am I doing intermittent fasting? Does it really serve my goals? Again, I don't personally do it because I realized it was negatively impacting my health. So that's my little rant on intermittent fasting. Geraldine, I see your comment here. I'm convinced I undereat in general. Now I'm in menopause and lost 6 stone since 2016. I worry now about weight gain. I already track my food, mind over matter. Yeah, so I think that's another thing pertaining to women. We've gotten so much messaging about being smaller, about eating less, don't be too bulky. Women get a lot of different critique on what they look like and whether they're too big or too small, or it's within the media and the online world, you're never good enough as you are, because Companies can't sell you products if you believe you're good enough as you are. So there's a reason why, women feel that way, and women are some of the largest consumers of products. So I think it's really important to realize the ways that we've been affected by media and to focus on our health versus, being so concerned about our appearance. Of course, again, our appearance may reflect what's happening internally, but that's where I truly believe if you nourish your inner health, it will show on the outside. It will show on the outside and that you will look healthier, and that's, I think, what's most important. So I think it is really easy to undereat if you're a woman, and so it's important to, I think it can be really useful to learn how to use tracking as a tool to ensure that you're eating the right amount versus using tracking as a way to try to eat less calories. I know that for me, that was something earlier on in my fitness journey. Anytime I would track my food, it was because I was trying to eat less and try to eat as little calories as possible. When I started tracking a couple of years ago, I didn't want to track for that reason, but I realized that in order to really kind of heal and find a balance, I needed to be able to use tracking as a tool to help me ensure that I was nourishing myself rather than trying to eat as little as possible. So tracking can be really, really valuable in making sure that you're eating enough and that you're nourishing yourself. In particular, if you're a woman who's active, strength training, and you want to ensure that you're getting the benefits of that activity that you're doing. And sometimes, there's a lot of people out there that encourage intuitive eating or just listening to your body, which I think is great. And there's times where maybe you're not in tune enough with your body to be able to do that and to eat enough because you may be used to eating very little, and so you don't have the hunger signals that you would be having if your body was used to more regular, larger meals. So that's something that, if you've chronically underate you want to shift that, sometimes you have to override some of the, things that maybe feel like intuitions but might just be, habits and patterns from your past. I know for myself, when I was used to not eating breakfast after doing intermittent fasting for several years, I didn't feel hungry. But I'm not really hungry. So I kind of had to force myself to eat in the morning and eat a sizable meal in the morning in order to get used to eating a sizable meal in the morning and getting that hunger signal right when I woke up. And that's something that's important, especially for women, for hormonal health, is eating fairly quickly after you wake up is going to help you with your blood sugar, going to help you feel more grounded, and overall going to be less stressful on your body. Geraldine said, I love my breakfast too much to fast. Me too. I don't know how I used to do it. I mean, I do know how I used to do it, just willpower and feeling good that I was restraining myself. But now, no, I want to eat breakfast ideally within an hour of when I wake up. Just first thing, get fueled up and have everything ready to go, have my brain working well, have my body getting the energy it needs to get going with the day. Questions? Any other questions or comments you guys have on this topic? Love to hear from you if you do. Let's see, what else did I forget to cover? There's a good article. I should find this article for you guys. And you can let me know if you've read it. It's not a new article. It's an old article from Precision Nutrition, if you're aware of it. The article is titled, The Cost of Getting Lean, Is It Really Worth the Trade-Off? So this is something to keep in mind if fat loss is your main goal and you want to be shredded. Because as somebody who used to be shredded, I know some of the trade-offs of working towards getting your body fat as low as possible. I used to have very, very low body fat. Everybody thought I looked great. Oh my God, you're so fit. But it caused a lot of problems. I didn't have my period for many years. I'm still recovering now, over 10 years later, from these things that I did to my body that have taken a long time to kind of unravel and to heal from, both physically, but also emotionally and mentally and spiritually. So there's nothing wrong with wanting to lose some body fat and to improve your health. And, at a certain point, there's where you can go overboard. Like with anything, you know, there's extremes at either end, and we want to find healthy balance in the middle. So I'm going to share the link to this article. I'll read you the intro of it. It says, "Six-pack abs, tight butts, lean, vibrant, flawless health. That's the image the fitness industry is selling. But have you ever wondered what it costs to achieve that look? What you have to do more of, what you really have to give up? Make no mistake, there are real trade-offs as you attempt to lose fat and improve your health. Let's talk about what they are so you can consider how to get the body and the health you want while living the life that you enjoy." So there definitely are trade-offs. I'm going to share this link. Hopefully that is clickable for you. It looks like it is. Yeah, so I would highly recommend reading that article if fat loss is your main goal, just so you have a good idea of what are the trade-offs for getting really lean. And there's a cool like infographic where it shows you the different body fat percentages for men and women, like a range, and the like benefits and trade-offs of each of those. And they're being, you know, there's going from the extreme on either side. So I think it's a really good one. You guys should definitely read that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the article if you do give it a read, or if you have already read it, let me know. PC just asked, what's a healthy range of body fat percentage for women and men? That's a good question. You know, I don't know off the top of my head, but that Precision Nutrition article tells you kind of some different ranges and some benefits about them overall. I think there's many different ranges in which you can be healthy. Again, I think it depends for men versus women. I think when women start to go below 20%, that's low. When they're below 15%, that I think may become, not for all women, because again, there's exceptions to every rule, but for many women that starts becoming a problem where if your body fat is under 15%, you may have some different hormonal disruptions. For some people that may be higher. Some women may just need a higher level of body fat for their hormones to function well. For men, honestly, I'm less familiar. I think you could be healthy at like a range of body fats, including a very low one. Besides that, there's trade-offs. As it mentions in that article, there's going to be certain trade-offs. If you want to stay super, super lean, there's certain things you have to do with your exercise and with your diet that may prevent you from maybe being healthy holistically, or maybe emotionally or spiritually, or really enjoying your life. So yeah, I think there isn't a specific range that I could say is like, oh, you should be in this range. I think the most important thing to do would be for you to, as you work towards being healthier, maybe taking some notes on how you feel, you know, at different stages of it. Like maybe you've lost some body fat initially, and you notice your energy is higher, and you notice some, you see physical differences as you lose a little bit more body fat. You're feeling even better, and then as you lose a little more, maybe your energy starts to dip, or you're noticing different things. And some of that could be, you need a nutrition adjustment or an exercise adjustment, or it could be, that body fat percentage is a little bit less maintainable for you, a little less healthy for you. I think one of the most important things you can do is tap into what you notice about yourself, because you could look at all the guidelines in the world and they're not going to be specific to your case and all the different circumstances for you and in your life. So one of the most important things you can do is get in tune with your body and, take some of this outside information and use it to guide you. But remember, it's just a guideline, and that your truth and reality is going to be likely different from that, or there's going to be other considerations with regards to that for your specific individual needs. Other questions? I see a question from Balo. Is there feedback on form in the Kettlebell Solo program? I feel so out of tune with my body since I'm obese and physically inactive. I worry about the different exercises I can really do well. That is a great question. So first of all, when you become a member, we do currently offer 2 Zoom onboarding calls where The first one is an introduction. The second one, we go over form specifically. So knowing that some people have concerns about form, we go over form in that Zoom session to make sure you feel safe and comfortable. But the other thing to note is that Kettlebell Solo was created with the beginner in mind and with the reality that it's online training, that somebody is watching this at home and doing it from home. So what that means is that all the exercises are fairly simple. We don't do any highly technical movements, so you're not going to see any snatches, cleans, Turkish get-ups. You're not going to see that in the Kettlebell Solo classes or programs. We do things that are very simple so that most people can do them no problem without much technique instruction. There is some technique instruction in some of the programs and classes, and the movements are fairly simple so that most people could just grab a light kettlebell and try it out regardless of their kettlebell experience. So they are intended to be simple enough for you to do them without needing a lot of form instruction, and we do offer that onboarding call to help people feel confident and to just give kind of the pro tips and little tweaks that most people need in order to do the exercises just really correctly and get the most out of them. So let me know if you have any other questions about that. Any other questions on this topic? The best type of exercise for fat loss. I talked earlier, for anybody who wasn't here earlier, I talked a little bit about cardio versus resistance training and the fact that they're both important for health, but if you're going to choose one bang for your buck thing for fat loss, I would recommend resistance training. It's going to give you a better effect as far as building muscle. It's going to boost your metabolism by building the muscle, and you're still going to get cardiovascular benefit. It may not be as long in duration, so it may not necessarily build your endurance the same way that cardio would, but you're still going to get cardiovascular benefits from resistance training. And as far as building muscle, burning fat, it's going to be a more effective use of your time. That being said, cardiovascular exercise, it's really important for heart health. I do encourage it. I do encourage especially gentler forms like walking. I think running is great if you really enjoy it or if you're training for something that requires running. And if you're not, if you don't necessarily need to be doing a lot of running, walking is a really great, enjoyable way to get your cardiovascular benefit without really taxing your system and taking a lot of time to recover. So the main form of cardio that I do is walking. Occasionally I do a bike ride and I lift kettlebells. Very occasionally I run or do a few, walks or runs up a hill, but really mostly it's just enjoyable walking. Let me know in the comments if you do cardio training and what your favorite style of cardio training is to do. Also, because we're on the topic of kettlebell strength training, in a few weeks inside the Kettlebell Solo membership, we're going to be starting our 5-week kettlebell strength training program. So if you want to know how to increase your strength, how to increase your kettlebell weights, that program is going to be a great way to learn how to do it in a sustainable way. We do three workouts a week. One is under 20 minutes and the other two are between 30 and 45 minutes, but the main reason they're longer is because there's longer rest periods in order to count for using a heavier kettlebell and building strength. So if you want any more info about that program or how to join us, again, it's a 5-week program. If you want to join that, comment strength and I'll send you the details on that. Geraldine says she loves double hand kettlebell swings. I'm now learning to slow other movements down. My cardio is bike rides and walking. Yeah, kettlebell swings are obviously a great way to work on your cardio as well. Great way to do conditioning. And I think, I see some people who get into doing these like 100 swing a day challenges or 10,000 swing challenges. Personally, I think it just carries more risk to do tons and tons and tons of reps day after day. It just seems hard to recover from. Obviously, you could do it with a lighter kettlebell. Maybe it's okay, but for some people, doing that much repetition of a hinge pattern is going to cause some stress on their lower back, may not feel good. So I think it's great to do swings for cardio. And if you're going to do something longer duration, I think walking is great. Do some swings, do some walking, give yourself some time to recover versus swinging day after day after day. Yeah, Mia and Balo, I will send you the info for that. You can join the strength program by just getting the strength program by itself, which is a 5-week program that you would have access to ongoing, or you can join the Kettlebell Solo membership, which is a monthly or annual fee, and you get access to 15 plus programs, 120 plus classes, tutorials, challenges. We're starting a mobility challenge today, members only community, and you get 7 days free so you can try it before you buy. So what you would do is just go to kettlebellsolo.com and you can sign up there, and then I'll send you the specific link to the strength program so you can check it out. You can see the classes and the length, the class descriptions. You can check it out and just see if it's something that would interest you. And I'll add that link there. That's for the strength program. Okay, so I see PC asked, walking with a 10 kg rucksack, is rucking a good exercise for fat loss? Yeah, I think rucking could be a good exercise for fat loss. I think, again, as the title of this live said, the best type of exercise for fat loss is the one that you will do consistently and enjoy doing. So if you hate rucking, I would say it's a bad exercise for fat loss. If you enjoy rucking, I would say it's a great exercise to do for fat loss because, again, you can lose fat with many different types of exercise, and there's no one magical way to do it, and it's also going to depend very heavily on your nutrition. So if you're rucking, which is, cardio, but it also is providing you with resistance, but that's something you really like to do, great. Dial in your nutrition, you're likely to see fat loss occur. You're welcome, Mia and Geraldine. Let me know if you have any other questions on that. Yeah, like I said, you can do a 7-day free trial. We also, on my other YouTube channel, we have free classes that you can check out. They're follow-along classes, which are from the membership. There's just way more of them available inside the membership. And there's some samples of some of the programs we have there as well. So you can check that out and see if it's something that you're into. Our students find it really easy to have just follow along classes and programs at their fingertips, because all you need to do, click the video and hit play, and you just follow along. And you really don't need to have a lot of different kettlebells to start with Kettlebell Solo. One light kettlebell, you can make progress with that one light kettlebell with many of the classes we do. For this 5-week strength program in particular, ideally you have a range of kettlebells because we're going to be decreasing the reps and increasing the weight of the kettlebell that you're using over the course of 5 weeks. So if you are interested in that 5-week strength program, I would recommend you have a range of kettlebells. And what that range is going to depend on your strength level of both your upper and lower body, because we're going to work on both. If you have questions about that, you can let me know. Any other questions that you guys have about the best type of exercise for fat loss, kettlebell training, strength training? As I've covered my outline for you guys. And I would also love to hear, either now or if you're watching this as a recap later, let me know what other live topics you'd like to see. So I have a second live coming up on Wednesday where I'm going to be debunking fitness fallacies. So you guys are gonna want to show up for that one. That's gonna be a good one. That's gonna help debunk some of these things that are really common that are out there. And you might be surprised by some of them because a lot of them, people just say these things like they're true and they're not necessarily true. So join me for debunking fitness fallacies on Wednesday. That one's going to be at 9 a.m. Pacific time. But I would love to hear from you what other topics you'd like to see me go live on, because I have an idea of what people might be interested in, but that might not necessarily be what you're interested in. And if you're interested in it, there's probably other people who are interested in it as well. Mia, the other YouTube channel, I just posted above your comment there. So it's youtube.com/@kettlebellsolo. You could also just type Kettlebell Solo into YouTube. You can find it there. There's a lot of sample classes you can check out to get an idea of what Kettlebell Solo is about. Again, ideally, you want to start with a fairly light weight, especially either if you've never done kettlebells before, especially, but even if you've done kettlebells before, this is going to be a different type of kettlebell training than most of the other kettlebell training that's out there. So it's, Mia just said she wants to learn safe form and technique for kettlebell. This is really a perfect place to start because, as I mentioned, the exercises we do are really simple, yet really effective. So they're going to give you all the benefits of kettlebell training, but they're not very technical. So again, anybody could just grab a light kettlebell and do them. So great way to set your foundation. If you do want to move on to more technical kettlebell exercises, if that's something you're interested in doing, you absolutely can do that down the road. And this is going to prepare you to do that safely and effectively because some of the kettlebell exercises that are really common you see out there, for example, the kettlebell swing, it's a great exercise and it's not a beginner exercise. It is very quick. It's technical. It's not an exercise to start off with right off the bat. You want to set a really good foundation with your deadlifts, with your squats, with your leg circles, with your around the body handoffs. Some of these more basic exercises that are going to give you the foundation that when you do go onto the swings, your lower back, your core, your legs, your upper body is strong enough that if when you're practicing the swing and you make a few mistakes, it's no big deal. You're not going to hurt yourself because you've already set a foundation of strength that will then allow you to practice those more technical moves with room for error until you really master them. Yeah, so Mia said she's never done kettlebell. This is exactly what we created Kettlebell Solo for, is for somebody who's never done kettlebells before. I would recommend starting with like a 5 to 10 pound kettlebell. And ideally, it's a kettlebell with a fairly large handle so that you can switch hands more easily. But whatever kettlebell you have, you can use for it. It's best to start really light to just get used to the form because it is going to take some time for your muscles, your tendons, your ligaments to adapt to these new moves. And we do use different stances that are going to challenge your body. Even if you didn't have a kettlebell, it would challenge your body. But with the kettlebell, it's going to be even more challenging. So I've got some kettlebell samples here. So you can see these two kettlebells. Does anyone have a guess as to which one is heavier? Which one of these kettlebells do you think is heavier? Big pink one or the small gray one? Any guesses? Any guesses? Which kettlebell is heavier? This one or this one? Okay, Geraldine's got a guess. She said small. PC said gray one. So, this is a trick question. They're the same weight. These kettlebells are the same weight. So the difference between these two kettlebells is that this is a cast iron kettlebell. These are called cast iron kettlebells, and this is called a competition kettlebell. So this one's way bigger, right? A lot of times people think this one is heavier because it's bigger, but they're the same weight. They're both 8 kg, 18 pounds, and these are just two different styles of kettlebells you can buy. Generally, cast iron is cheaper, and competition is more expensive. So these competition bells people use, as their name says, in competitions, but they're also just great for general training. I really prefer these kettlebells because for many exercises where you'd have two hands on the bell or where you'd be switching hands on the kettlebell, this bigger handle is going to be really helpful versus for the smaller cast iron kettlebells are smaller. So for example, here's another little kettlebell. Okay, so you notice that the handle is much, much smaller, right? Handle's small, handle's a lot bigger, more space, more roomy. So for a lot of the kettlebell exercises you're going to want to do, a lot of the exercises we do in solo, it's much better to have a light kettlebell, but one that's bigger like this. So with heavier cast iron bells, I don't have an example here, it's in the garage, the handle is going to be bigger, but that doesn't happen until the bell gets a lot heavier. So if you want a light bell with a large handle that you're going to be able to do every exercise with, the competition kettlebell is going to be better for that. But as I mentioned, they are a little bit more expensive. This brand, Vulcan, is actually one of the less expensive competition kettlebells out there, so that's a great one to look at. It works very well for kettlebell solo and pretty much anything you'd want to do with a kettlebell. Let's see. You're welcome, Mia. Very welcome. Hi, Jedi James. Jump on the ball. No, not going to do that. Okay. Any questions about the kettlebells? So Mia, if you have any other questions about what type of kettlebell to get, let me know. Mia said, oh, you bought a kettlebell years ago, didn't understand the differences. This is helpful. You're welcome. Yeah, I think many people don't understand the difference. There's no real reason to. And when you go and type kettlebell, I want to buy a kettlebell into Google, just tons and tons of different brands come up, and it's very confusing. So know that any kettlebell will work, especially when starting out, but you do get what you pay for in terms of if you get a really cheap kettlebell, it's likely not going to be as useful for all the different things you want to do with the kettlebell as if you get a little bit more of an expensive one that is going to just last forever and you're going to be able to use it for everything. If you get a really cheap one to start, you might find a little bit later down the road that it's not quite the right thing for what you want to do, and then you'll have to get something else to replace it. So if you can get the right bell right off the bat, it'll generally save you money, and most kettlebells are going to last a lifetime if they're, something like this that's well made. It's going to last forever. You're not really going to need to get a new one. Besides, you may want increased weights and things like that. Yeah. So I see Bala, you have some comments here. Yeah, it's really important to do other foundational exercises before doing the kettlebell swing, because as I mentioned, it takes time to learn, it takes time to master, and before you master it, you don't want to do a lot of reps of it. You want to just, if you do a lot of reps while you're still making mistakes in the technique, you risk getting injured, but two, you're kind of patterning a movement that you then have to go back and correct and fix, because it may be okay with a light bell, but as the bell gets heavier, maybe your lower back isn't feeling great. So you want to set a really good foundation before you do those swings. And Balo said he has a 35-pound kettlebell, but he's thinking of going down in weight. I would absolutely recommend that, especially for solo, and if you haven't worked out in a while, I would recommend even maybe a 10 or 15-pound kettlebell. It sounds light, but the exercises we do require a light kettlebell, so I would highly recommend something lighter. Your 35-pound kettlebell will definitely come in handy as you start to build your strength. You'll be able to use it for a lot of the leg exercises and maybe some of the upper body stuff too, but I would really recommend having a light one, so again, you can set the foundation and make sure it's not too difficult for you when you're first starting. You can always lift heavier later, but it's harder to go back from lifting too heavy and either burning out or injuring yourself. Then you're going to have to take all this time off. So it's better to go too light, leave our egos at the door. Doesn't matter what the weight of the kettlebell is. If you're feeling the exercise, you're feeling the exercise. Is there a color code for kettlebells? 16 kg is generally yellow. Yes, there is a color code for kettlebells. That being said, some brands don't follow the color code. So there is a color code. As you notice with this one, this 8 kg is pink. And even this cast iron, you notice it has little pink little circles around the horns. So yes, 8 kg is generally pink. Blue, or 12 kg, 26 pounds, is blue. And the 16 kg or 35 pounds is yellow. 20 or 44 pounds is going to be purple. The 24 kg, 53 pounds is green. 28 kg, 62 pounds is orange. And then you've got the 32, which is 64, 70 something, is going to be red. So that's your color code. But again, some brands don't follow it. So they either don't know that there's a color code, or they don't care and they're making up their own color code. So yes, there's generally a color code, but it doesn't always apply. Or, we have some kettlebells that have been painted different colors for fun. Like for example, in some of the solo classes, I use an orange kettlebell, but it's not a 28 kg. It's actually an 8 kg that's just been sprayed. So there is a color code, but don't always rely on the color. Are there certain types of stretches that are best to do before the kettlebell exercise? yes, there's specific, I wouldn't necessarily say stretches, but exercises that are great to do before you do kettlebell exercise. That's, for example, if you look at the Kettlebell Solo YouTube link that I sent in the comments, our warm-ups include, there's a warm-up included in the follow-along workout. So you don't need to do anything additional besides that. We take you through, one of the most important ones in my opinion is the pelvic tilt, and then we take you through just body weight, hinging, squatting, some neck and ankle mobility to prepare your whole body. So there are things that I would recommend. You can see them for free on our YouTube Kettlebell Solo channel. You can see what those general exercises are that we do before almost every workout. Good question, Mia. Geraldine said, love your overhead rainbows, feel the triceps working. Yeah, absolutely. Shoulder rainbow, great exercise that doesn't require as much overhead mobility as just doing like a shoulder press. So for those of you that don't know, shoulder rainbow is here, here. So great exercise. You don't have to have as good of shoulder mobility, yet it's still really gonna work your shoulders, your tricep, your back, your obliques, your core, and again, pretty basic. You know, this is pretty simple. There's not a lot of technique. You're just moving the kettlebell from side to side, but it feels really good. If you have never tried it before, try it. If you have a light kettlebell, maybe don't try it with the 35 pound yet, or the 16 kg yet, but if you have a light kettlebell, try it out with a light kettlebell. Mia asked, can your kettlebell membership be done on our own time or only at preset times? No, it's absolutely self-paced. So we do have certain times where we launch new programs to do together, but that's optional. If you're motivated by doing things as a group, that's useful for you. But all the programs and classes inside of the Kettlebell Solo membership are self-paced. You can do them at your, when you want or when you don't. Like if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. It's there's no real pacing set to it. It's up to you. And we have certain programs we recommend beginners start with, or certain classes, but you don't have to. You can also go in there and just use the classes and programs however you would like to use them. Any other questions? You guys have some great questions today. Love it. Let's see if I missed any. Any other questions about different types of kettlebells? I got one other type of kettlebell I can show you here. Actually, I have two other kinds. So this one is a bionic body kettlebell that we got off of Amazon. So what I like about this one is that it's shaped like a competition kettlebell. It's got a wide handle. They have a 10-pound kettlebell in this shape and size, which I love because, again, the handle being bigger is better for two-hand exercises or exercises where you can switch hands. So the other great thing about it is they're relatively inexpensive compared to a competition kettlebell like the one I showed you. This is a lot cheaper, so it's a cheaper way if you don't have a large budget to get a competition-like kettlebell. So you can find these on Amazon if you just type in bionic body. It may not be the best for some exercises, like anything in the rack position, well, feels okay. But if you were gonna hold it here for a long period of time, it's not the most comfortable kettlebell, but for Kettlebell Solo specifically, we don't do that. So it's not super crucial. So those are a cool type of kettlebell. I got a question here from Lisa. Hi, Britt. I can't seem to get the motivation to do the hour-long solo classes. I did 2 a month ago, but none since then. The quickies and 15 minutes classes are easier to accomplish. How many times per week would you recommend for a beginner? Good question. So one of the reasons we created the quickie and the Fit in 15 classes are because they require much less motivation to do. If you don't have a lot of time, if you only have 10 minutes, you can fit a class in. And sometimes biting off more than you can chew, for example, like an hour class, it just feels like too much. It's hard to motivate yourself to do it. Then that's not going to lead you to success, because the success comes from being consistent over time. So as far as how many times per week as a beginner, I think the most important thing as a beginner is to establish a consistent routine. So the question to ask yourself is, how many times per week would be so doable for me that I couldn't fail? So for example, if that's, okay, 1 quickie a week, that I could easily do that. Do 1 quickie a week. Stay consistent with that for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Build up your confidence and fulfill your promise to yourself of doing it consistently. If 2 times a week feels really doable, do it 2 times a week. You can do quickies every day. I would say Fit and 15, you could do it every day, but some of them are more difficult, so it might be more realistic to say like 3 or 4 times a week. You don't have to do it that much to get benefit. You could get benefit from doing them, again, once or twice a week if you're consistent over time. It's less about how many times a week are you doing it and more about how long have you been doing it each week. So if you've been doing it for a year once a week, that's likely going to get you further than if you did it 5 times a week for 2 months and then you stopped. So ask yourself, what's really realistic for me? And start there and try to stay consistent for a long period of time. And again, try not to up the ante too quickly. If you do 2 weeks of twice a week and you think, oh, that's easy, I'm going to now up it to 4 times a week, you increase your risk of failing again. So keep yourself so consistent that it starts to feel almost too easy. That's how you keep yourself going in the long run. You can always add more later, but again, the consequence of doing too much too soon is much greater because you risk burning out, getting injured, demotivating yourself, and then you have to build up the momentum to start again. So make it easy for yourself. PC said, I find soft kettlebells good for beginners. I don't want to break the floor if I accidentally drop the kettlebell. Yeah. That's a good point. Now, this is a soft kettlebell that I showed here, but I do think this baby could do some damage if it was dropped on a floor. It's a 25-pound kettlebell. It's kind of soft, but it's also kind of heavy, so that is always a risk. Ideally, the space that you work out in, you have either a mat set up or you're working out outside. If you're doing exercises you're not sure about as far as dropping, then maybe, practice them out in your yard or somewhere where you've got gravel or sand where it's no big deal if you drop it before you take it inside and do it inside. Also, just good form will prevent you from dropping the kettlebell. If you really practice your form and work your way up from the light bells, you're much less likely to drop the kettlebell, but it can happen on occasion. The other kettlebell I was going to show you guys here is this kettlebell, which is the Pro Kettlebell. Anybody seen this kettlebell before? This kettlebell has something unique about it. It's got an open bottom versus this kettlebell, solid cast. This kettlebell, hole in the bottom. So this one is hollow cast, which is what that's called when it's hollow. And they kind of fill up the weight from the top, and there's a hole in the bottom. And I lost the magnet on my microphone. Give me a second. Okay, there we go. This one is also hollow cast, but it's open, so you can actually use it. Like you could hold it like this. You could, press it like this. You could squat it. You could hold it like this and work your grip. So it's got some cool options there. What I love about the Pro Kettlebell is that these are made in the USA. This is probably the only, as far as I know, these are the only competition-style kettlebells that are made in the USA, which is really awesome. I love supporting USA-made goods. These are more expensive. They're kind of a specialty kettlebell. They have these contours here that are supposed to make the kettlebell more comfortable in the rack position. So they are a lot more expensive than your regular competition kettlebell, so that's a downside, but they are a small business. They're made in the USA, which is a lot more costly than making them in China, so it also makes sense. The price is more. I think it's worth paying more for high quality product that a lot of care and effort was put into. It's made in the USA, and those kettlebells are great for a lot of different things. This one in particular is the Atlas kettlebell. So they have an Apollo kettlebell that's the same size as this competition kettlebell, but this one is actually a little smaller. If you can see that, the bell's a little smaller, handle's a little smaller. I really like this Atlas kettlebell for kettlebell solo because it is smaller but still has a big handle. It's easier to bring it like around the legs, around the shins and thighs like we do for different exercises, and around the body. It's really nice for that, or even just for swings because it's smaller, it's easier between the legs. If you have big thighs like I do, it's easier for the kettlebell to fit between the legs. So this is an awesome kettlebell here. I'll drop links to these kettlebells in the description of this live afterwards. Let's see. Yeah, Geraldine says she loved the look of Pro Kettlebell, patiently waiting when they ship from Europe next year. Yeah, I'm sure they have their hands full because just being made in the USA, being a small business, it's probably challenging enough to fulfill the US demands and then to grow it to different countries, but I'm sure they're working on it. Oh, thanks, Bala. I'm glad that was good advice. Yeah, the biggest issue is consistency. I think that people tend to often value like intensity over consistency, but consistency is much more effective than intensity. So if you can be consistent over a long period of time, you're going to see hands down better results than being really intense for a short period and then burning out. Are there also adjustable kettlebells? Yes, there are many different types of adjustable kettlebells. I don't own an adjustable kettlebell. These ones, you can buy clips that come in and attach into the bottom of it that can go up by like 2 kg. So these can be adjustable that way, but like a full-on adjustable kettlebell, it's just one kettlebell, you can adjust the weight. I don't have a lot of experience with it, but I know there's different reviews on YouTube that I've seen where they kind of review the different adjustable kettlebells. So that's something to take a look at if you're interested in getting an adjustable bell, which can absolutely work for any style of kettlebell training. You're welcome, Mia. Any suggestion on types of kettlebell racks? Like by kettlebell rack, you mean like what to store your kettlebell on? Is that what you mean? Geraldine said short sessions and consistency I call kettlebell snacks. Yes, exactly. I like to call those short sessions like movement snacks, like the kettlebell quickie classes that are 5 to 10 minutes. It's like a movement snack. You know, you just need 10 minutes, get a little movement snack. Sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes it builds your momentum to, you know, do a few more or work out for a little bit longer. It's a great way to do it. I think, you know, I would recommend even in terms of consistency, better than trying to train hard 2 or 3 times a week. If you just did a movement snack every day, you might actually end up feeling better than trying to push yourself for, you know, 1 or 2 hours several times a week. Depends on the person, but if we're talking just general health and boosting your energy, boosting your mood, short bouts and being consistent over time is the way to go, and it's much more doable. Mia, yeah, I don't have a recommendation on a kettlebell rack. I don't have one. Maybe I should have one, but I don't. My kettlebells just live on the floor. There's some of them over there. So I don't currently have a kettlebell rack, so unfortunately I don't have a recommendation for you. But if anybody else has a kettlebell rack recommendation, drop it in the comments and let us know. Any other questions about types of kettlebells, being consistent, strength training, exercise for fat loss? Let me know. Or if you have any suggestions for future lives, I'd love to hear from you. Let me know what topics you would like to see me talk about next with regards to strength training, kettlebells. I have done a few lives on the stall bars, if you guys are familiar with those. That's stall bar or Swedish bar. You see we've got some rings on there now. We also have a fun new Pilates attachment that we're trying to figure out how to use because I'm not very familiar with Pilates moves, so we gotta spend a little more time on that. But I'll be sharing with that, sharing some more of that in the future. PC said kettlebell flow exercises look really cool. Yeah, kettlebell flow is fun. That's definitely something I've played with before. It definitely comes from having a good base. Again, I think setting a good foundation is really important. So something we teach in Kettlebell Solo that is crucial for flows, we teach you how to step with the kettlebell, how to step to the front, to the back, to the side, which is key to just the footwork of moving and flowing with the kettlebell and being in sync with the kettlebell. So it definitely takes a good foundation for that flow to really feel flowy. Humberto said ideas for fat loss with kettlebells. So Humberto, I don't know if you were here for the beginning of the live, but I was talking about the best type of exercise for fat loss. And the best type of exercise for fat loss is the one that you will do coupled with consistency over time, coupled with nutrition. So it's really important to take a look at your nutrition. And as far as kettlebell goes, it doesn't matter so much what specific program you do, so long as you can recover from it. It helps you set a good foundation. What I would recommend is kettlebell solo, which is a style of kettlebell training that I teach. We have a membership with classes and programs. You can also check out our YouTube channel if you just type kettlebell solo, S-O-L-O. That would be the way that I recommend getting started with kettlebells to burn fat. Lisa said she'd love to see a live kettlebell partner passing demo. Yeah, that's a good idea. We're definitely not going to do that one inside. That would have to be an outside demo. There are lots of clips of kettlebell partner passing if you want to see that, because I'm not going to do that now. But if you want to see that, go to the kettlebell partner passing Instagram account, and there's tons of really cool partner passing plus partner passing like flowing, essentially. It's called partner passing KPP freestyle. You can see some of the guys who are very experienced at KPP passing and flowing and doing all kinds of really cool stuff. So check out the kettlebell partner passing Instagram. I'll share the link with you here so you can see it. Kettlebell. It's very mesmerizing to watch. I can't say I'm quite at that level yet. One day. So check that out. I just typed the Instagram link. You're welcome, Humberto. Let me know if you have any other questions. Any other questions or requests besides the KPP live demo? I'd love to hear your other thoughts and ideas. Now, as a reminder, I'll drop those links for the, you're welcome. Thanks for your idea, Lisa. Good idea. Also drop the links for the different kettlebells that I showed you in this live as well. Mia has some topics ideas. Kettlebells for fat loss, functional kettlebell exercises, safe, correct form and technique, kettlebell strength, kettlebells weights, kettlebell resistance training. Awesome. Great ideas. I'm gonna have to jot down some of these ideas. You guys coming up with great ideas. Any other ones? Kettlebells for fat loss, functional kettlebell exercises, safe, correct form. I could definitely go over that. Go over some like tutorial type stuff or instruction for some of the basic exercises. If you have specific techniques you would like to learn, let me know. Let's see. That's kind of all I got for you guys, unless anybody else has any other questions. You guys have been an awesome audience today. So many great questions. Kettlebell for aging, that's a great one. Which I can absolutely recommend kettlebell solo for that. Kettlebell solo is great for ages 40 plus, 50 plus, 60 plus, 70 plus and beyond. So our oldest student in the kettlebell solo membership, she is 82 years old and she is able to do the classes and has made some great progress with her strength, flexibility, balance, and coordination. So kettlebells are great for any age, specifically kettlebell solo, because we do exercises that are low tech, safe, simple for somebody to do at home without a ton of coaching and technique. 50 plus, that's a good idea, Mia. Kettlebell swing technique, okay, that's a good one. It's something I mentioned earlier in the live is that it's best to build your foundation before doing kettlebell swings because they are highly technical. They are going to take time to practice. You don't want to just jump up and wait. It may take months for you to really get the form down with a light kettlebell with practice over time before you're going to be swinging any kind of weight in order to do that safely, and that's with having set a good foundation of strength beforehand. Practice step ABH live. That's good. That's a good idea, Lisa. That would be a good one. So that's teaching people how to step. Yeah, so definitely check out the kettlebell solo classes. I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts. Leave me a comment if you try one of the classes and let me know what you think. Again, they're best to start with 5 to 15 pounds. I'll drop that link here one more time for the YouTube channel where you guys can check that out. Check out those follow-along classes that are there. We have a number of different ones from 5 to 10 minutes, which are the quickies. We have the Kettlebell Fit in 15 minutes. We've got Express class, which is 30 minutes, and Solo class, which is 60 minutes. So there's a range depending on how much energy you have and how much you want to challenge yourself that day. You're welcome, Geraldine, and thank you for joining. I appreciate it. So I think I'm going to sign off now. I appreciate so much all of your suggestions and questions. Be sure to join me if you're available on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific time for debunking fitness fallacies. And if you have any other questions for me, I'd love to see you there. Thank you for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your Monday.